It's clear that Fitzpatrick cared very much for Michelle Zamiti. They had an affair, but there was very little evidence of obsessive, stalking, crazed behavior on his part. That is to say, it's not the usual kind of situation where you have a spurned lover engaging in a series of more and more threatening and creepy actions until finally there's some sort of killing.
That's definitely true, Ron, but that doesn't mean he didn't commit the murders. I mean, not everyone fits the prototypical pattern where you would see a constant escalation in outrageous conduct. However, I think the evidence that I've seen clearly demonstrates that this man is guilty, and I believe that the closing argument you alluded to is going to make all the difference in the world in allowing the jury to make the inferences that the prosecution has been arguing.
All right, well, we'll go to the evidence you've seen in just a minute, but I want to get back to motive, because something that struck me in the course of the case, and I have to bounce it off my psychologist, is I didn't get the sense that Sean Fitzpatrick so much wanted sex with Michelle Zamiti. This was not his driving force. Instead, I got former prosecutor colleague, Jason Friedman. You heard Michelle Zamiti testify that she, in fact, said to Michael, to Sean, the only way we're going to be able to be together is if something happened to Michael. That, in and of itself, is pretty powerful, right?
No question about it, Ron, and I'm sure the jury is seriously weighing that statement. It's almost like an invitation from Michelle Zamiti to Mr. Fitzpatrick that, hey, if you want me, this is what you have to do, and I'm all yours.
Right, Paul Scheinberg? Now, if you, that piece, now, the reason this testimony is important, Jason Friedman, is that earlier, during the course of the investigation, Sean Fitzpatrick indicated he had gone to Freedom Market for coffee. Years later, he can't remember, and the prosecution exploited that on cross-examination. Maybe it was Dunkin' Donuts, maybe it was here, you don't remember anymore. But it's not unusual, is it, to remember what you did yesterday, but not remember 2 years later what you did yesterday, or even that you remembered it?
No question about it, Ron. I get into this all the time with my clients. People frequently have mixed memories. You don't remember what you had, for breakfast yesterday, but you remember things from last year clearly, and vice versa. I think the most important thing that came out, though, is he acknowledges that he has lied. He's an admitted liar on the witness stand.
Whoa! He lied about having sex, and he lied about having a girlfriend that he didn't have. Gosh, imagine that, Jason. A man claiming to a woman that he was having a relationship with somebody he wasn't really having a relationship with. Whoa, smoking gun,
yeah,
dude.
Well, it's a lie nonetheless, Ron. It's a lie nonetheless.
Okay, but seriously, given the prevalence with which people in the course of their lives lie about their relationships, it's not a particularly significant lie, is it?
I would agree with you. It's not a particularly significant. But however, in a circumstantial case such as this, every little iota, every little tidbit makes a big difference. If you had more direct evidence against this defendant, this would become less important. But in a circumstantial case such as this, I think it is important.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from you is because the prosecution lacks direct evidence, and in fact, while they have a really good theory, they don't have a lot of evidence to support it. What a good prosecutor does is to make the most out of little tidbits that really don't mean much. It doesn't sit well with me,
to create
Jason.
Motive, though, Ron.
Oh,
in the absence of more direct evidence, motive, although it's not typically technically an element of the crime, motive in a circumstantial case is much more important than in a case when you have more direct evidence.
Okay, Doctor.
So it was a walkway. The house wasn't that old, and I was still finishing off lots of things.
Okay, he seems casual, he seems relaxed, he seems very detailed in his answers, exactly as you would expect from somebody who, in fact, is telling the truth and accurately recalling what it is he did on that day. Right, Jason Friedman?
Yeah, that's one way to look at it, Ron, but it's also somebody that rehearsed their story very, very well and is just delivering a performance in a court of law. Okay,
but Jason, in all honesty, no matter what a defendant does on the witness stand, you can find some way as a prosecutor to attack his demeanor. So if he is incredibly detailed, then he's rehearsed and coached. On the other hand, if he doesn't remember, what do you say?
No question about that, Ron, and that's why it's one of the reasons why it's so rare for defendants to take the stand, because prosecutors are going to spin it each way, and therefore it's up to the defense attorney when they give their summation to make that very argument to the jury, to say, listen, they can't have it both ways.
Right, because if he didn't remember, you'd say, aha, all these memory lapses. Now he remembers too well.
Exactly.
He's coached.
Yeah.
If he comes off confident, then he's smug and arrogant, right? But on the other hand, if he's nervous and is looking away, then he looks guilty to you, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and therefore it's such a fine line. How do you navigate that fine line? It's one of the inherent risks of taking the witness stand as a defendant in a criminal trial.
Well, indeed. Paul Scheinberg, you've had a... Well, Jason Friedman, it is the problem, is it not, that we get into in criminal defense? The little things, like Gert's timeline, the cell phones, the pings. Sean Fitzpatrick is very, very close to having a perfect alibi, but close doesn't quite do it, does it?
No question about it, Ron. And I tell you, just objectively, I mean, who's more credible? A defendant testifying with a murder rap facing him is squarely in the face, or Gertrude, the elderly neighbor? I think you can't get a more credible witness than Gertrude, and that's a major, major problem. Keep in mind, she's very regimented in what she does. She does her exercise routine the same time each day. I thought she was very persuasive.
But Jason Friedman, my prosecutor colleague, I remember from law school when they were illustrating circumstantial evidence, they would give an illustration like this. It's wintertime, and you go to sleep, and the ground is completely bare when you go to sleep. You wake up, it's covered with snow. That is circumstantial evidence that it snowed while you were asleep. Not direct evidence. You didn't see it snow. There's no video of it snowing, but it's fairly compelling proof, right?
That's correct, Ron. And the key to circumstantial evidence is drawing inferences from that information. And in a purely circumstantial case, in my opinion, it's the closing arguments are just so important, because at that point, the advocacy really comes through, and you're putting together all those pieces of the puzzle for the jury, and then, of course, asking the jury to make the inferences that you highlighted and say it all adds up to proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
Gene Casares, I'm going to take a moment and step out of my role as a defense attorney and ask my guests to step out of their roles. And let's just pretend we're citizens and we're sitting there in that jury room. My takeaway from all that I've seen and heard is that I think he probably did it, in the sense that he would be voted most likely to have done it. I am, as I sit here now, as a citizen, just not convinced beyond a reasonable doubt. Jason Friedman, stop being a prosecutor, be a citizen. Are you convinced?
I'm very close. I'm very close to being convinced. It's a really close call, Ron. I've been thinking about it the whole show. And I think for me, it really comes down to the two alibi witnesses. These are salt-of-the-earth type of people who have no vested interest in the case. They were both very clear. I'm talking about Mr. Martin and the neighbor Gertrude. And for me, the alibi witnesses just didn't pan out for Mr. Fitzgerald, and for me, that would make me comfortable coming back with a guilty verdict.
Right. I mean, again, I